I'm Laura Rogers, joined by National Public Radio's Ryland Barton, the Kentucky General Assembly, back in action this week. Ryland, what are some of the bills and the legislation that you're keeping your eye on?
So far, the big thing that's happened this week is they've moved that bill that will reduce the state's income tax another 0.5 percentage point. That's going to head on to the governor's desk. Governor Andy Beshear has said that he will sign that bill. So rare moment of bipartisanship in Frankfurt on that one. But it's something that a lot of Democratic legislators and other critics have worried about, that it might undercut the state's ability to generate revenue, especially at this time when it's a little uncertain what the future economy might look like. And this would take a lot of revenue out of the state's hands. It would be reduced by about $718 million annually, eventually. And that's out of the state's annual budget, discretionary budget's about like $15 million. So it's a pretty significant percentage of how much money the state brings in. This is still something, though, that the governor said he's going to sign. Republican lawmakers have said that they are going to be cautious going forward on whether or not they're going to continue to do this. This is something where every year the legislature will review, depending on certain factors if they're met, whether or not the legislature will continue doing that. But they're envying other states that have, say, zero income tax, like Tennessee, although Tennessee has higher sales taxes and other states like that generally do. It might require Kentucky eventually to rethink how it's bringing in revenue, shifting from those income-based taxes to more consumption-based taxes like sales taxes, which a lot of critics will point out are regressive because, say, poor folks who end up spending an entirety of the money that they make each year, or a larger percentage of it, that's all going to be taxed on things that they spend, versus folks who are able to save away that money. They're not going to end up spending that on taxes because it won't be income tax as much. So that's the big thing. Also keeping our eye on whether or not another DEI bill, a bill restricting DEI programs in Kentucky, or especially higher education, will end up passing. That's something that died at the last minute during last year's session. There's been a lot of energy around that in conservative legislatures around the country. Obviously, we've seen that in the first few weeks of President Trump's second term in office. He's gone after DEI programs, and we'll see if Kentucky lawmakers are going to rally around that. A lot of higher education institutions and a lot of private companies, big national private companies, have already done away with their DEI programs in anticipation of some of this. In Kentucky, University of Kentucky, Northern Kentucky University, they've already kind of scrapped their DEI programs and changed how those programs are working. Whereas in the federal government, we've already seen that those folks in those programs have actually been put on leave and possibly eventually fired. So there's a lot of concern, a lot of folks watching to see how exactly that rolls out, because these programs were created to try and create a more level playing field, create a more diverse student body, employment body within both in state government and within society. So we'll see if that still remains a priority for some of these institutions.
I want to also ask you about some bills that have been filed concerning public health, and they seem to indicate a growing skepticism concerning public health officials, national, even international health organizations. These are bills pertaining to raw milk, fluoride, blood donations that have COVID-19 antibodies. Tell us more about these bills and how you perceive them to be part of a growing conversation.
Kentucky Public Radio's Sylvia Goodman did a roundup of some of these bills, which some of them come up every year, but it does seem like there's more and more every year. One of them here would allow the sale of raw milk. That's milk that's unpasteurized. There's been a growing movement around this. It's something that incoming U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy has said that he's behind, saying that raw milk has more higher nutritional factors, and pasteurizing milk has been a practice since the early 20th century. It's widely considered to be a healthy practice that prevents the transmission of deadly, but also just diseases that are going to make folks sick. Increased skepticism around some of these issues. Lawmakers and others, critics feeling like adults should be able to make their own decisions around some of these things. Another big national movement and a bill attached to that would make it optional for water districts to fluoridate their water, for localities to fluoridate their water. This is something that's happened in Florida already, and some localities have begun voting to not fluoridate their water. This comes after a study from a year or two ago that raised some concerns about high levels of fluoridation of water leading to lower IQ levels in children. Granted, this is a much higher level than water is fluoridated in any part of the country. But it's sounded the alarm for a lot of folks there's been theories around this for decades and decades, and that really has galvanized that movement. Another one that you mentioned that would have prevented folks with who have had the COVID vaccine or have COVID antibodies in their bloodstream from being able to donate blood. It would have also allowed people to directly donate blood to people instead of just going into a larger pool of blood donors. That bill has the author of that has said that she made a mistake there and is planning on withdrawing it or at least amending it. But it's another theory that's gone around that the blood of folks who have gotten the COVID vaccine shouldn't be something their people should be able to opt out of having to take that, even though there's really no clear indication that it's unsafe at all. So yeah, a lot of these bills that are kind of related to this health skepticism of kind of prevailing scientific views around health, making things optional. Yeah, they're really starting to crop up in the Kentucky legislature this year.
And then another bill that was filed that may not go anywhere, but it concerns gun safety, firearm safety.
Yeah, this is a bill I always follow every year that it would require parents who have kids in the house and also have guns in the house to keep those guns locked up. It would make it a Class B misdemeanor. In Kentucky, folks should be especially aware of this. There's the tragic school shooting in Marshall County in western Kentucky, in which the shooter there found a gun in his stepfather's closet and ended up killing two of his classmates. And injuring several others. And there's countless, and there's another example of that in Louisville in recent years. There's countless examples of this around the country. It's really kind of the lowest rung of a gun safety measure. And I think like any responsible gun owner would also say that that's best practices if you have a kid in the house to keep your gun locked up. But this bill is proposed every year and it goes nowhere. It's been proposed again, and we'll see if there's any discussion about it. It's it hasn't gotten a committee hearing yet, but it's always part of the discussion.
And there's also cases, of course, of children that just come across guns, think they're a toy, or they just mishandle them. And we see tragedy ensue from those situations as well.
They're completely accidental.
Ryland, thank you so much for checking in with us. Always a good conversation with you, and we will see you again next week.
Thanks, Laura.